Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tell Not Show. As always, we are your hosts. We have the wonderful and ever lovely Kirsha Fox, author of Son of Deception and The White Leaf Child. She's a homeschooling mom of four, avid gamer and reader.
Yes, and my co-host is Julia J.K. Allen, editor, author, and author coach. She's a fantasy and horror author who loves to put magic in everything. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, tonight we're very excited to welcome our guest, Kinsey Presley-Hornung.
Kinsey is the author of 8 novels, including horror romances and various genres within the horror and paranormal realms. We're very excited to get to know her today.
Yes, Kinsey Presley-Hornung. Well, we're very excited to have you join us tonight. Thank you again for agreeing to be on the show. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your writing journey and what got you started in writing?
Well, I originally started writing when, I guess you could say when I was in like the 2nd grade. I applied for a competition through Reading Rainbow, where they did it for a few years. I don't think they do it anymore, but I won something, and I got a certificate that was signed by LeVar Burton, and I was like, oh, I'm into this. This is the only thing I'm ever going to care about again. So yeah, that's kind of what got me into it. And then I used to carry around composition notebooks everywhere I went. Yeah. Sometimes like stacks of 6, because I'd work on multiple different things at the same time. And then when I was like a late teenager, I started writing on Wattpad and went viral, which was very fun. Viral on Wattpad, but you know. And then
still an accomplishment, yes.
Yeah, it was very, very exciting at the time. So, and then I've just been writing. It's be about 20 years now. So
yeah, yes, quite an accomplishment. And 8 books is nothing to shake your finger at either. So very awesome.
Some of those probably include, I have a couple of like reference style books as well,
which
aren't necessarily written. They're more like, I do a lot of drawing as well, and so I hand through like, one's like a novel workbook and the other is like a novel randomizer where you roll dice to randomize books. One moment.
Oh, that sounds very fun.
Like story writing prompts.
A little bit. Like it's so I'll have like big master lists of types of characters, genre, settings, and so you can have like, okay, it's a horror novel that takes place at like, a cemetery, and it's a romance between an alien and a fisherman, something like that, like something very simple, and you kind of have to combine it into something that makes sense.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting, like a great way of doing prompts. Like with the roll of the dice, you get a little of that fun element to it as well. It's kind of like a game.
Yeah, so I that's a fun one. I like that one.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So tell us a little bit about the genres you write.
I mainly gravitate towards the scarier, spookier things. My most recent book, Gnawbone Heartstrings, is more like very serious, more extreme horror, but the other things I have kind of are relatively, like I have a sapphic YA book that's like a vampire book and it's a bit spooky, and I have like a different YA book that's also a bit scary. I have one book that is fantasy, like low fantasy, and it's probably, the most non-horror, non-paranormal thing I've ever written. So it's a fun one.
Yes. I enjoy writing horror myself. I was actually dared to write a horror story, and that's kind of what got me started in writing some of the scary stuff as well. So it can be very fun though.
Yeah, it's great. It's very cathartic, just be like, and then the head gets ripped off.
Yeah. Right, you can write your enemies into your stories and have fun getting your vengeance out.
Yeah, it's like a voodoo doll made out of words.
Right. I love that. I love putting it that way.
So can you explain your writing process a little bit, how you go from idea to finished written book?
Well, the science I've gotten it down to now, because I've gotten like a full draft of about 10 books, some in various states of disarray, but gotten to that end point at the very least. And I've learned that I won't be able to finish it if I think about it too hard. And so my first drafts are wild. They're insane. They're entirely almost unreadable to myself because I just gotta just keep the momentum, keep it rolling.
Right.
That's all. So my writing process is a very repetitive, very, just I kind of have to it's like if you take a crumpled up piece of paper, like each one, just ironing out the folds and going back. I don't do it in a very, at least the initial drafts, I don't do it in a terribly organized way, because if I think about it too hard, it will not get done. So I let myself think about it hard for like 6 months afterwards and just keep going back over it, listening to it, letting other people read it and
doing the cleaning up process.
Yeah, I'm definitely a lot more of a, clean up later.
Yeah.
Embrace the chaos.
Right. Yeah. So, do you do a lot of discovery writing then, and like a lot of pouncing at the beginning?
Definitely. Like sometimes if I am really, struggling with some things, or if it's like a really, really raw idea that I'm just kind of writing to see how far I can take it, I will. And if I am trying to like not give up on it immediately, once I've kind of hit that wall and I don't necessarily know how to keep going, I will try and like sit down and write out and organize and at least come up with something that can kind of go in the middle for the time being and let me, kind of roll the idea around a little bit and create something.
Yeah. Yes. What do you think is the most important part of writing?
The most important part of writing? I don't know. Is it terribly cliche to say that you are enjoying it?
No, I love that answer, actually.
Because I don't know. I feel like, my theory is that you can kind of sense when somebody is having like a really hard time writing whatever it is that they've written. Like, you can almost get a feel for like the scenes that people were excited about and the scenes that are supposed to be filler scenes and the scenes that are supposed to, they're like really gripped the person who made it. I feel like you can kind of taste that through the pages a little bit because there's a lot of passion behind it. And so I'd say that that's probably what I would consider important at the very least as a reader, if not as a writer.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful answer. I think that you can definitely tell when somebody is enjoying themselves and when someone's just producing for the sake of like, I need to get this out sometimes, for sure.
Yeah, and sometimes there are just, there's scenes that just kind of have to happen to keep it moving forward, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I feel like you really want to be able to taste like the root passion of the story. Really made the writer want to write it and put it out there.
Right, why they made this book in particular. That makes sense.
So do you find your writing style is more about the plot or more about like more character driven?
I'd say it sort of depends on either sort of which book it is. Like there's certain books, like I know Crooked Baby Blue, I wrote the entire thing in the original draft in less than a week because I had the idea, but I didn't really have a huge grip on like who the characters were when I was writing it. I just knew that, I wanted this, weird kind of creepy fantasy story that takes place on like a boat and, there's like the Kraken and mermaids and blah, 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 and, espionage, etc. So, I was kind of writing, just characters doing things, and they sort of formed themselves as the story kept going, and as I got kind of a grasp of the type of story I wanted to tell. But then again, I don't think that book would like make nearly as much sense without the very specific characters that within it, since that did happen. So I'd say like maybe I tend to write my first drafts very plot driven, but I do think that the characters are very important to making it,
right,
good and not a first draft.
You deepen the characters as you go through the draft. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very, like, for me, I would hope that I have a balance of both. So, yeah, I like your answer to that question too.
Do you have a favorite author, and what is something that they do well?
I mean, to go with my mildly more cliche answer, my favorite author would probably have to be Kurt Vonnegut, from Indiana. It's hard to avoid. I've got a couple of Kurt Vonnegut tattoos, because I was very edgy as a teenager, obviously.
Right.
But obviously he's a very good writer, and I always appreciated that he wrote big ideas in short sentences, and he wrote, like big important stories in a very accessible sort of way, in a way that didn't necessarily kind of, dangle the carrot above, like, the non-elites of the world and stuff. And I always
very accessible.
So, and obviously humor is very important, and making it, a story that's important to tell, but also easy to hear.
Yeah. No, I love Vonnegut as well. I remember it was kind of scandalous because in my high school, not my teacher, but one of the teachers taught Breakfast of Champions, and of course it starts out with the asterisk and beaver illustrations, and people were scandalized by it. Some of the students were, but yeah, I've always loved Vonnegut. Do you have a favorite book in particular of his, or?
Sirens of Titan, actually.
Okay.
It's always been, there's little aliens that are in that book called harmoniums, that I have harmoniums tattooed all over me because they stick to things that create sound vibrations, and they feed off of the sound vibrations.
Oh, right.
They're very fun. So that one's definitely my favorite. I bring it up. It ends up being the main character in this book. It's her favorite book, for not just because it's my favorite book, for like an actual reason that is part of the plot, but I can help sneak it in.
Yes. No, I love little Easter eggs and references in books too, like other literary works and fun stuff like that. Yeah.
It's always fun when you're like, I get that reference. I know.
Right. Like, aha. What have you learned from the writing process?
I have learned that reading a book and writing a book is an incredibly different process, and if you try and hold the writing process to the standards of what it's like to read a book, then you're going to struggle very much.
Yes.
Because, I feel like I think it's a quote from Sunset Boulevard where they say that, the people who watch a film like to imagine that the actors just walked on the screen and are just saying these, saying the obvious things that just come to their mind, and that it's all natural and it's all organic and it all flows automatically, and there's nothing happening behind the scenes. You want to be fully immersed in that process. And I feel like you want to have that same experience with like a book. You want to just feel like you're just writing down a story exactly as it's supposed to happen, exactly the wording you want, exactly everything. And that is just obviously not how that's going to work. And if you get too caught up in like, the perfectionist details and making it, just read perfectly through from beginning to end in the way you would want it to look in like a final draft, you're going to get really knotted up, because that's
right.
That works.
No, I love that phrase, knotted up, because it's very true. I've seen so many authors get stuck in chapter one because they're trying to make it perfect. But a lot of times you can't write a perfect chapter one until you've written the end. And so they'll spend months just like trying to make this perfect chapter. And it's like at the end of the book, they rewrite it anyway.
Pretty much. Like,
Yeah.
I like especially like with my first drafts, because I write them like I don't even like spell check anything. Like they're borderline unreadable. And but you know, like I just know that even a sentence I like will probably have to be tweaked to some degree at some point. Like, you know, it's gonna have to be moved. Like even if it is like one line is readable and good and makes sense and I like it, you know, maybe it needs to go in a different place, or maybe it needs to like be shorter because there's a lot of longer sentences around it and we don't want it to get super bogged down. And you know, there's just or maybe it just has to go overall because it's not necessary. So yeah, things can get very
yeah. No, I love that. Knotted up.
Whenever I start to get paralyzed in writing, I have to just repeat my mantra: let it suck. Let it suck. Get it down.
Right. Just get the story down. You can
completely right. If you're trying to edit too hard as you go, if you're trying to get it perfect right off the bat, you are going to get absolutely paralyzed by it. It's, you know, you're going to go to snail's pace and just never really get it done.
Yeah, and I do feel like a lot of people, you know, the whole point of editing is to be analytical and be critical of your ideas and all of that, your wording, all of your choices. And creativity is the opposite of that. So if you're doing too much editing too, you can kind of stifle your creativity before you even begin.
Pretty much. Like if you get too fixated on the, you know, on this idea that like what you're writing right now is going to be seen by a lot of other people, and that, you know, which is just like not going to be true at all. But like if you get too fixated on this idea that you have to be critical of everything as it's coming out, and you have to already just know 100% of the story before it's even on the page, you're just gonna get it's gonna get
I think I think it's Stephen King who says, like, write with the door shut, meaning don't think about other people's opinions of what it's going to be while you're writing. Worry about that later. For sure.
All right. So how do you make time for writing, since everyone is just very busy these days? Yeah.
I started back when, like, I picked this habit up back when I used to work like 60-hour weeks and was a bit, you know, didn't have necessarily a lot of time or energy to like sit down. I started writing on my phone because, again, first drafts, it doesn't matter if, you know, the spell check demon changes half the words. So, you know, but it was because it's very easy to, you know, on a lunch break, or if, you know, whatever you're doing is in like a slow season, you don't have anything to do, but you have to be somewhere that isn't sitting directly in front of your computer, you know, you can just pull out your phone. I have like a Word app on here, and, you know, just type out sometimes like 500 words, give or take, you know, just, you know, slapdash something, just keep the momentum. And that helped me. Like I managed to write 2 full first drafts in a year, working 12 days on, 2 days off, which was rough.
Oh yeah.
So, that's crazy.
Oh, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't do that anymore. I do have slightly more time to, you know, actually sit in front of a computer now. But even like I fun fact, was in a car for 7 hours this morning. So, you know, I wrote like 2,000 words just kind of on my phone, just to, you know, because I had a moment. So it's a very good skill to just be able to, you know, find the tiny little pockets of time to just do something.
Steal the time for words whenever you can. Absolutely. I know Kirsha's great at that, being a mom of 4. She's just always it's always in the back of her mind, and then when she gets a moment, she
all those
jots everything down.
That you just do yourself. constantly writing down notes wherever you can on whatever happens to be nearby.
Yes, yeah.
You're the one that sounds like you should be giving out the tips. So.
Right, I know, right? Super busy.
There is no secret to it. It's really just like you said, Kinsey, where you just find those little bits of time, those little moments to write down your notes or write down 100 words even, like it all counts, it all accumulates. You just do what you can because you can't not write.
And thank goodness for phones that we have something on us at all times that we can record our words on. Yes. All right. If you could tell a new author one thing, like what would you share with them?
I'd say the two big things that really, kind of helped me, put myself out there, because, a lot of people who choose to do things like writing aren't necessarily the most, they aren't necessarily the most social, the most bombastic, the most ready to, put their face out there and try and get attention from people, is that to just get rid of any notion that, it's bad to like humiliate yourself just like a little bit. Like just be embarrassed. Like it's fine, make the social media posts, write what you want to write, like make the silly little TikTok videos to the silly little TikTok audios. It doesn't matter if the people you went to high school with or your family sees them. Just do it, because you can't just like not do anything, especially in the modern age in which all authors have to be their own marketing team.
Yes.
Yes. That's why we're here.
Right.
Yeah.
Doing shows like this, yes.
But I completely agree with you. It's easy, again, to get caught up in that perfectionism of if I can't put out an amazing TikTok, it's not worth doing. Or if what if this post isn't funny enough, isn't good enough, doesn't have a good enough for attention? What if it doesn't go viral like you keep expecting every single post in TikTok?
Right.
But it's partly inconsistency, and it is partly being genuinely you. If people like you, they're going to be gravitating towards your content.
Right.
So I think that is excellent advice for a new author that we haven't heard before on this show.
Right. I think that especially, I think that, the pressure of being perfect or the best can kind of paralyze you before you even begin. So it's just doing it is wonderful advice for sure. Have you guys seen the TikTok that a user made where he was saying it was very black and white thinking, and it was very much, if you use any dialogue tag other than said, then you're wrong and you shouldn't be writing or something. It was like an extreme stance he was taking on dialogue tags, and there was a lot of responses that people had, obviously, but
because any attention is good attention.
Right. Yeah.
Ploys where you do a misspelling on purpose just so people will start commenting to fix your mistake, or you say one negative to get people to flock and get yourself a lot of views. I'm not sure that I would ever want to invite that kind of negative attention into my life. That's not and so I can't say whether or not he fully believed what he was saying or not, but I think we can agree that is kind of not very good thing.
Not good advice. No. We on the show, we're not a huge fan of absolutism and all of that stuff. So
I feel like that is anybody who's offering writing or advice who is giving these like incredible extremes, these like definite like, no, you shouldn't do this type advice. I don't consider that to be like, it sounds harsh to say I don't consider it massively valuable. I guess it's just writing it's about expression and trying new things. But it's the nature of language in general. It's about, evolving and doing stuff and learning the rules so you can break them. All of
Right,
that.
right.
So I feel like writing tips should be more geared towards, positive, how to like make things, sound better, how to change things around.
Right. They shouldn't be restricting. Yes.
Yeah,
Because
I feel
I'm
like,
a big
oh, go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say I'm a big advocate of using said for dialogue tags, just because it's mainly invisible to the reader. Not that you, but I would never say like you can't do anything else, or else you're wrong. And so I was just like, this is a bold stance that this person is taking. Yes.
I mean, there's usually some new sort of, grammatical, like trendy thing to hate within the writing
Right.
sphere. For a while it was like adjectives. You weren't supposed to use any like, big, like you weren't supposed to say anything like loudly.
Oh, adverbs. Yeah.
Adverbs. That's the word. Sorry.
Yeah.
You weren't
No,
supposed to
you're fine.
anything like that, because then that was bad. And then it moved, to dialogue tags. There's always like something that's,
popular to hate on. Yeah.
There's work to the advice to find a stronger verb rather than using an adverb. That is valuable. But to say that adverbs have no place in your book, or that you're only allowed to use one page, or like that's still, that might be more extreme than
especially because sometimes the adverb is the perfect word choice to describe something without taking 20 words to describe it. You have the one word, so it's a balance of everything. Like I feel like everything should be a balance. Like dialogue tags should be a balance. Like you can, and it also depends on genre. If you're writing middle grade, you should be using the fun dialogue tags. Like that is a convention of the genre, So
it teaches your readers like vocabulary.
Right.
Like an important role of middle grade work.
Yes, exactly. So sorry, I totally was on a tangent, but I was just like, you brought up TikTok, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, I've been thinking about this. So I apologize. Yeah. So what would you say is your favorite part of writing?
My favorite part? Oh, it's definitely the initial planning and the the daydreaming element of it all.
Yes, the daydream.
When the idea is new and shining, and you're inspired, and that's all you can think of and all you want to do, until you start writing it and get to the pesky middle bits, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's but when it like the when you're kind of writing and directing the mental movie, and you're writing that part's great, because I think that like when people, I know when I was, a wee youngin' myself, I kind of assumed that was like what the whole experience was, and it wasn't going to be a lot of, more challenging, more repetitive, more kind of, like boring action of reading things over and over and all that. Back when I was like, a 13-year-old girl that was writing like, werewolf romance in a composition notebook, that was just all vibes. Like
yes.
It didn't make any sense. It was convoluted and silly and disjointed, but it was so much fun. And I assumed that's what just, writing any book would be like. And it's definitely not, but it is the best part for sure.
Yeah. No, I think there's like a pure form of joy and innocence in the daydreaming, in the like discovering the story and the ideas and all of that stuff. And I feel like I really hope all authors like hold on to that little teenage version of themselves that was like loved that part of writing, and that they hold on to that as adults. Yeah.
We tend to look back at that time and cringe just a little bit, but I think that it's an important part of a young writer to have that era where most of the stuff you write is self-insert. Most of it's based off stuff that you're like, but that's okay. That's how we begin, that we grow from that, but we needed to be there at some point, and we don't have to look back with any sort of regret. It was just part of the learning process.
Right.
The important part, I think, is that we do grow from that eventually.
Right. We grow up from the self-insert part. But it's still important to enjoy the process of writing, I feel.
So you're saying I shouldn't publish my confusing, convoluted teenage werewolf romance?
Well, you could, but maybe edit it a little first.
Maybe
right?
edit it a little bit.
That just takes all the fun out of it.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have talked to other authors, we both have, where they said, yeah, I wrote a really terrible thing in high school, but as an adult, I went back, I fixed it, I made it better, and I published it.
Yes, people do find little gems in their old writing. Sometimes it's fun to read old writing because you're like, oh, I forgot about this idea. And then other times you read it and you're like, oh, I forgot about this. And I'm kind of glad I did.
Well, technically the first like full book that I self-published a few years ago was the book that I wrote that went viral on Wattpad when I was like a teenager. And even still, it's definitely not, I don't dislike the book, even in its final form.
Right.
But I would, even as I have like done stuff with it now, I don't think it's like, excellent. It's a good time,
Right.
Like, I think it was good to get it into a form that I was at least somewhat pleased with, just so I think about it again. But
they can't all be masterpieces, right?
There's
we can't.
For just reading a book because it's a good time. I think
enjoyable.
Some people are snooty, but like we're not always looking for masterpieces. We're looking for escapism. We're looking for joy. We're looking for scratch that itch for craving. And so don't be too down on your own writing. I'm sure it was really good.
I choose to be very optimistic about it. I don't really talk about it as much anymore because I don't think it's a very good representation of my current writing.
Right.
But I do, like if people kind of organically find it and like, cool beans. That's great.
Right. Yes. No, that makes sense. Do you have a least favorite part of writing?
Least favorite part of writing? It usually comes in roughly around the 10th reread and edit that I do myself. Like, it just staring into the computer, just being like, if I have to look at this wall of text one more time, I am going
right.
Carrie. It's just like no, I think we can all relate to that. Like, oh my gosh, if I have to read this chapter one more time, I'm going to just explode. Yes.
They say you should write the book that you want to read because you're going to read it so many times.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
It's all the second that it's it's done and it's out there was totally worth it.
Right.
Deep in the trenches.
Yes.
Boy.
Totally understand that. Very relatable.
Okay. So do you have any major influences on your writing?
Major influences? I mean, I read like a lot at my job that I have currently, my job. It's one of those where I work with like industrial machines and I have headphones in to theoretically protect my ears. And so at work, because I also, once you listen to audiobooks excessively enough, you like dial it up to like 2x speed. So I have a tendency, I'd like plow through books like crazy. I can get through, if they're like 8 hours long, I can get through like 2 in one day. And so at this point, I feel like, I feel like a bit of a Frankenstein of just every random author that I can find on Libby.
Right. Is there a certain place you get inspiration from?
Certain place I get inspiration from? It kind of depends. There's been a few individual books where there are like locations that kind of, if not inspired, definitely like fit into the mental mold of where I was wanting to set things. So, like in Good for Gone, my like original one from when I was a teenager, it was obviously going to be set in the house I lived in my like early teenage years and stuff, because that, because it was obviously a self-insert because I wrote it when I was 17, but
Right.
And then like Crooked Baby Blue takes place on like a big kind of ferry, and of which I've been on like the Alaskan ferry and stuff. And so like, oh, that's, I was trying to think of like my mental references for like, a big boat in the middle of, the cold water. And I was like, oh yeah, I've been on one of those. I've wandered around that like a spirit in the night for of my life. Sure, I can set a book there.
Right. No, I think it's good to write from some experiences that we have, because then we can add that realism into it, because we need the details and stuff to be realistic so that we can then ask the reader to suspend disbelief for the more fantastical elements of the story. Yeah. So it's not necessarily a bad thing to draw from experience at all. Yeah.
Yes. I think it's a common criticism when we're reading something when we're like, I don't think the author themselves have ever gone through this. Like,
right.
like you can kind of tell that they're approximate,
Right. Yeah. Have you ever been on a boat before? Like when you have those moments and you're like, I don't think that's how it works. Yeah.
Anyway, yes, it is a valuable thing to have gone through experiences yourself, because you can put that into your writing and it's a little bit less of a stretch.
Yes, absolutely.
I love that.
Yes. Do you ever struggle with writer's block? And if you do, how do you get through it?
I don't really struggle with like idea-based writer's block. I tend to be kind of constantly having new little ideas. I'd say that I used to definitely struggle with, like writing about like 20,000 words and then getting stuck on some kind of middling bit. And I found that the only way I've really been able to like just get past and, progress through those moments is like I just started like, if I don't know what a scene is supposed to be, if I don't know what I want to do there, but I know what I want to do like one or two scenes past it, I'll just skip it. Just
right.
Like I don't let myself get blocked. I'm just like, no, I'll just write what I know. Like I'll just
yes.
No. Yep, I throw brackets up there. Something amazing happens, and I just keep on going.
Yes, I'm a huge fan of the side notes to myself and moving on. This thing must happen, and then go.
Just keep going.
Yeah,
brackets are great.
Sometimes, like if I know, like these two characters need to discuss something, they need to establish these things and say these things. Sometimes I'll just write like dialogue blocks. I'll just I don't write anything else around it. I'll be like, okay, these two characters, they need to be somewhere, and all I know is that they need to discuss this, and that's all.
Right.
I'll just go and be like, oh, how could you? Oh, this and that. Oh, that. And then
have the conversation.
It's like a sketch where it's just pencil. You haven't inked it in yet. It's the ideas, putting them down.
Yeah. Very much. It's a wonderful way of putting it. I notoriously write wall of text. Or wall of dialogue very often in my first draft. So I'm right there with you on that.
What has been your most significant writing victory so far?
My most significant writing victory? I don't know. I'd hate to say the the viral Wattpad thing. I don't want to say. I don't know. I'd say the most has been that I've really learned a really good, like schedule for myself. I really understand myself as like, a writer and editing and, what I can get done in a certain amount of time and, like allowed myself to be like, oh, I can do this, and I know it'll take me, roughly about 2 weeks to do this, and so I can schedule that, and then I know that I can have the book ready by like next February, and so it's
that sounds amazing. Yeah, that you've streamlined the process of your creativity so much.
Yeah, so I'd say that that's been my biggest personal victory, is that I've really, I've grown to understand myself and my limitations, but also, allow myself that if I can stick to these schedules and I can, get results, I can get things done, which is I feel like one of the biggest, looming things when it comes to, writing in any capacity, is especially long form writing, like writing a book, is that it takes so much consistency and so much time, and there's so many like weird little details and stuff, and that kind of understanding, yourself and what you can get done and what you can't get done, and how long it takes you to do things and stuff, is very positive. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah.
If that was a struggle before, to achieve that is phenomenal. Like to understand yourself to that depth, to understand your process, to have it, it's like you're the book that you finished.
Right.
Knowledge, but I absolutely love that answer so much, because a lot of people say, oh, it's publishing my first book. And you're like, no, it isn't my Wattpad success. I've grown beyond that even. And I just absolutely answer.
Or the Reading Rainbow success. That was also an awesome victory of yours.
I don't know where that certificate is. It's
no.
I'm so sad about it. I remember it clear as day. I remember getting it, and it's gone into like a box that went into an attic, that went into a storage unit, that disappeared off the face of the earth. I'm so sad about it.
But you'll always have that memory. Yeah.
Always have the memory, yes.
What are you reading now?
What am I reading now? I usually about once a year, generally like when it starts to become fall. I don't know why this is. I go through 2 very significant reading phases, because a lot of the times I like, I like romance. I like a good, little paranormally, fun time rom-com. Like generally that's my preferences as far as reading. But usually once the weather starts turning, I get really into classic lit, and I'll read like 4 of them in a row, and then I'll get really into autobiographies and memoirs, and I'll read like 4 of them in a row. So I'm halfway through reading all of Louis Theroux's, like he has a few books about his experience. He's like a documentary maker, and I enjoy his documentaries, and he talks about some of the behind the scenes stuff and his own personal experience interacting with a lot of interesting and strange individuals. So
No, I love people who read a wide variety of things. So
you never know where you're going to find inspiration from, what's going to touch you, like what's going to I don't know, some books, they're fun, they're enjoyable, but some books stay with you in a way, and you never quite know where you're going to find those. All right, do you have any writing advice that you were given that just does not resonate with you?
Writing advice does not resonate with me. I think we discussed earlier the sort of hard line, like, don't do this, these things are bad, like, because I feel like, especially when I was a bit younger, I was very receptive to these like hard and fast rules, because writing, especially in long form, can be very daunting, and you want that structure, especially when you're a bit younger, to understand like, this is how writing is good and this is how writing is bad, and I need to follow all the things. So when I was younger, I would be like, we were talking about with the adverbs, I saw some post somewhere, probably like Tumblr, it was like 2011, about like you should never use adverbs, and so I would go through my thing, just delete all the adverbs for everything, and obviously some of that like didn't make any sense because adverbs exist for a reason, like maybe not used constantly and attached to everything, but they do exist for a reason. And I feel like a lot of those sort of hard and fast rules kind of ignore the fact that the English language is an ever evolving thing that should be like a basis as a source of creativity. And if you create this structure of everything has to fit these very specific molds and structures and formulas and rules, then you're going to you'll definitely create a book that will make sense, but you're not necessarily creating something that's maybe exactly what you want, that's pushing any boundaries or anything like that. So I'd say that as a more kind of umbrella thing, any super specific hard and fast rules,
All right. Well, where can readers find more out about you online?
I am most active on TikTok under the handle Narastalgia. It's a combination of narrative and nostalgia. And that is where I am going to be most active, but I also have a Instagram page under the same thing. And obviously Amazon. I think I have a few hard copies that are available through Barnes & Noble as well. So those are where you can find me. And my newest book is going to be out for pre-order soon.
Yay! Congratulations on finishing another book.
Yep, it's been a time.
It's been a wild ride, I'm sure. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, it's been great talking with you guys. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here and chat.
We're very glad to have you. And thank you to everyone listening along at home. I do want to say, remember, there's always more than one way up the mountain. And if you are interested in being a guest on our show, you can find us on social media at The Tell Not Show, or you can find or email us at thetellnotshow@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening along, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the show, consider subscribing and liking. We appreciate all the support. Julia J.K. Allen is an author, editor, and coach, and can be found at hijinksrudder.com.
Kirsha Fox is an author, avid reader, gamer, and mother to 4, and you can find her at kirshafox.com. Thanks, and see you next time.